So folks, thank you for coming out to EZ Homesteading's first farmers market, and what I hope to be the beginning of something quite interesting, which is we're trying to turn back the hands of time and let people have access to far healthier, far more nutritious food, sort of farm to table made easy, while at the same time lowering the price. And so this is just the first day of that event sort of taking off. We're obviously in here for a tour, and Chris just asked me, now Chris is in fact, Chris and Dave, they work here. These are the dynamic duo who do all of the really the heavy lifting at FantomWorks, all the gearboxes and engines and transmissions. And Chris just asked me, how is it going? And I likened it, I was about to tell him a story, and I said, nope, I'll just tell everyone the story of how FantomWorks started. The first client we ever had at FantomWorks was, we had opened up our doors, and of course you don't have any clients the day you open up your business. You've just got a building with a couple of people in it, and so everybody's standing around saying, what do we do next? And so I literally drove around in traffic until I found an old car at an intersection. And there was a guy driving a 1970s Bentley, and I pulled up right next to him, and he got stuck at a red light, and I jumped out of my truck and I banged on his window, and I have no doubt he thought I was probably gonna rob him or mug him or do something else. And I put your window down, and he looks at me, he does put his window down, and I handed him my card. I said, if you ever need anyone to work on your car, give me a call. And he goes, you'd work on this? And I said, yes. And he goes, I'll come see you. And sure enough, 2 hours later, he showed up at our door, and he was our very first client. We have his picture and his dollar up on our office. So that was our first day of doing that. This is our first day of doing this. So it's sort of the same thing, right? So you folks are all part of day one of the farmers market for EZ Homesteading. Now, when you look around, you'll notice that some of this stuff doesn't look exactly like farmers market stuff. This is sort of I see some tents and sleeping accommodations and solar energy things and freeze dryers and freeze-dried food and MREs. And so when I started thinking about what was wrong with what scared me, 3 years ago, I was scared out of the city. I've been living in a city all my life, and 3 years ago when you know, they said we have to put masks on and there's no toilet paper available, I was at work, and I called my wife and I said, whatever you're doing, stop. We're going to go out and we're going to find a farm and buy a farm today. And that's exactly what we did. We literally went out and we looked in Smithfield. I found a farm and I bought it that day. And we moved out into this farm, and in doing that, we started raising our own tomatoes and carrots and onions and chickens and turkeys and dogs and cats and ducks and pigs and cows and goats. And so now, 3 years later, we're basically self-sufficient. We have gone from city dwellers to completely self-sufficient, including we produce our own power with our own solar system. We produce our own water with springs and DC-powered pumps. So we are in a position now where we can live without any infrastructure at all. Food, medicine, everything, we're producing or have basically a lifetime supply of everything we need. So it encouraged me to start, because as people started talking to me about it, they said, well, how do I do that? And at that point I said, well, if I'm going to tell everybody how to do it, we might as well help them do it. Yeah, tell everybody and then help them do it. And so that's what you're in right now. Is Audrey calls this the adventure room. This is the shop for EZ Homesteading. So, you know, we have all the stuff, and I'll tell you, we've got a couple jewels here. Folks, if you don't have one of these, trust me, it is the world's finest set of heirloom seeds, the best packaged, organized, and designed system I've ever seen, and that wasn't available when I started. So that thing right there is just a little bit of magic in a box. Even if you bought it and just stuck it at home in a corner, that will save your life if something bad happened That right there in that box is one of the most valuable things in this entire building. So what we did is we created this. We're getting it off the ground. And so what we're going to do now is sort of a tour through the two companies. So I think most of you have been out and you've seen the farmers market. That today is our day one. This is the EZ Homesteading shop. We call it FantomWorks Off-Grid. And so it's a division of FantomWorks. So you'll notice there are vehicles in here because we are doing some off-grid stuff, some different types of EMP shielding of vehicles, marinizing, basically getting vehicles to work in a world that doesn't want to work. I'm just going to plug an author. His book is called 1 Second After. And I'm horrible here. I'm plugging an author and I can't remember his... Okay, somebody look up 1 Second After. I know his name. I've only said it 500 times and it's jumped right out of my brain while I'm talking to you guys. So somebody, that's the good... William Forstner. All right, Forston. William Forston. He's a professor in North Carolina, teaches history, and wrote this book, which did an amazing job of talking about what happens if and when the infrastructure, the food supply chain falls out. And if you read that book, I think you'll end up coming back going, okay, there's a few things I probably need to put my hands on. So with that, let's take a walk through and we'll sort of walk you through FantomWorks and what we're still doing. And Dave and Chris, if you'll join us, what the heck, they can answer questions too. So just sort of follow me and come on through the door. Come on this way, folks.
Oh, yeah. Well, he sort of got drafted, I think.
All right, so if you would sort of walk right through here and head in that way.
You forgot to give them the rules.
Oh, the rules. What are the rules?
Don't touch anything and don't go underneath any vehicles that are up on the left.
Yeah. Okay, so that's I forgot to say this. Please don't touch the cars at all. I don't care if they look like they're rusty and dirty. Just leave the rust and dirt alone. Please do not ever walk under a car that's on a lift. We had a few customers squished the last time, and I hate mopping up blood, and brains get really sticky, and it's just a mess, so we don't like doing that. So if you'll just stay out of those, we'll all have a better day. Coming in?
It's turning over real slow. You know what I mean? And I put 2 different starters in it, even jumped it to 12.
So this is the mechanics section. And so, look, everybody here may know about the FantomWorks TV show. Is getting a TV show a good idea or a bad idea? It's mostly a horrible idea. I won't talk about that now. Yeah, so trust me, it's here's the best way. How many people by a show of hands are married or have ever been married? Go ahead, put your hands up. All right, that's most everyone here. If your dad came out on your wedding day and said, by the way, I'm going to follow you on your wedding night all the way till tomorrow with my video camera, would that have been a great thing or a bad thing? That's a lot like having a TV show in a real shop. It's just like having your dad follow you on your wedding night. So maybe it doesn't work out so well. Basically, these guys do the lion's share of the lifting back here, and this is where, like, right there, this is, to me, all right, so I'm going to brag on a car. What you're seeing here, and again, please don't touch it because there is dust, and we try not to touch the dust. This is a fuel-injected 1957 Corvette, which holds the world's record for the fastest car in the world the day it was produced. No Ferrari could touch it. Nothing could touch this car. It was the fastest thing ever produced. First car in the world to break 1 horsepower per cubic inch. We've got all sorts of, and have had all sorts of world record cars through this shop. Cars that have made headlines around the world. There's kind of a fun shop, fun car. In fact, Rob, this is Rob. He had a lot to do with that. That vehicle right there, when you bought one in 1909 or 1910 or 1911, it basically came with a crate and a set of instructions, and it was the crate that became most of the back of this vehicle. So today people are upset if they have to change a tire. Imagine ordering a vehicle and finding out you had to do most of the construction of it yourself, and that's an example of what this is. This is just an incredibly well-preserved vehicle out of California. The owner sent it here. He searched all of his life to find a Gen 1 Bronco that was in beautiful shape, and he wound up with an absolute stunning vehicle. And we've got a lot of really cool cars in this place. Right back there, covered in about 19 layers of dust, is a 1,000 horsepower twin turbo 63 split window Corvette. And there's just stuff like that all over the place. So I'm going to drag Davey and Chris in here. Come on over here, guys. So I'm going to let them tell you, let's just stick with one thing. Doing mechanics in front of a camera, does that make it easier or more difficult?
It's like fixing cars and letting your customer and their whole family watch every move you make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really what it is. And so that literally happens. You know, when they watch the episode, they're sitting there with their whole family and watching every move you make.
Would I be correct in saying that keyboard trolls all know more about building cars than the world's greatest mechanics?
Oh yeah, they are. You know.
Yeah. So
every now and then we meet somebody on there that really does know something, and,
yeah,
and that's a good thing.
Yeah, we will get a benefit. Occasionally, someone will call us with an actual, real helpful hint. But 99% of the people, they'll call us up and go, you know, you have to change the oil on a vehicle, and it's like, yeah, thank you. By the way, just a note on a TV show, if you shoot a 1,000-hour job and you compress it into 45 minutes, I know this is going to sound sarcastic, but I have to say this, we don't show you every minute of that build in 45 minutes, and yet people will say, well, why didn't you do this? Well, what do you think? Maybe we did, but we didn't show that. So it's really interesting the feedback you get when you do a show. Yeah. Davey, thoughts? Do you like doing it or not in front of a camera?
It can be difficult at times, but it doesn't bother me too much.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, mostly just they get in the way.
Yeah, and it's a relationship we have to develop with the film crew, right? I mean, having someone in your face. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, sort of, yeah, so I have done this. I've literally grabbed their cameras and stuck them right in their face, and, you know, how do you like it?
Yeah. But no, it's, I mean, all in all, it's pretty cool. You know, you get people, oh, I saw you on YouTube, or I saw you doing this and that. That's a cool project you're working on. So I say there's a lot more good than bad about it.
And we do get to share what I would like to think that FantomWorks does better than about any shop in the world is we have a philosophy here of looking for the bad. We don't just do, like if a client tells you, hey, make my engine faster. I know a lot of shops that'll just go make the engine faster. If we're going to make the engine faster, we're going to look at the brakes. We're going to look at the transmission, the suspension, the differential. We're going to look at the chassis and make sure that everything is ready for that. Because if it's not, then making an engine faster is just going to get them killed faster. And we're doing what we can to give people the cars that they want, not necessarily that they say they want. Right. And I know that that sounds like the same thing, but it's not, folks. We generally don't. The project they start us on day one and the project we do are rarely the same projects.
Every car we work on is somebody's dream car. Yeah. You know what I mean? It is their dream car to them, not necessarily to us. So we have to be, you know what I mean? We have to be really...
Well, take a look at Orange Blossom up there. Orange Blossom is an example of a car that, to say it is a family's dream car would be an understatement of the century. The woman who inherited it from her now dead father cried 3 times in 20 minutes when I would just even ask her, well, what about the brakes? Do you know what your dad did there? She'd start crying. I mean, she was very emotional. That isn't a car to her. That's her father, okay? Yeah. When she goes out and she sees that car, she can see her dad in the driver's seat saying, come on, honey, let's go for a ride. And every time she looks at that car, thinks of that car, that's not 4 tires and a chassis. That is skin and emotion and a soul. And so Her father, who built her a really interesting looking car, unfortunately, he was a far better like body man and sort of designer than he was a mechanic.
Yeah.
He had his heart in the right place, maybe not his wrenches, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a job here. So we have this job of saying to her, and we've had to do it many times, your father did a wonderful thing for you with an amazing gift, but we really have to redesign this system or bad things will happen. And so far, the family's been great, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've been absolutely wonderful, but it's a very emotional
It's been a tough project.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? It's been a lot of work.
Yeah, so they didn't hand it to us and say, tune it up.
No.
They handed it to us and they said, look, we think we're going to die if we drive this a second time. So can you make this to where we don't die, but we can still enjoy what Dad built? And so that's really mostly what we do. When people say to us, well, you know, what kind of a garage are you? I say, we're not really a garage, so to speak. We really just bring people's memories back, and we deal with history and memories more than we do cars. Bring me a 1998 minivan, I'm going to give it right back to you. That's not what we do. All right? Any questions before we go on? All right, let's go into, we'll just go up to the front, and we'll sort of walk through a couple of rooms. So try and stay fairly close if you would. How's that food? That looks really good.
It is really good.
All right, come on through. Brigitte, if you guys can lead the way, or I guess you'll stay there. Rob, if you can lead the way to the
I
show.
can.
The best room in the building. Best room in the building.
Squish, squish, darling, squish, squish.
We're not live streaming. We're not. Why? Do I just cut it?
No, the second time was meeting no clear. It was sinking over there.
All right, so the reason I brought you up to this room is because this is really sort of the face of FantomWorks. This is the place that most people are used to seeing. The cars here, the way the process works at FantomWorks is the cars generally start here and end here as they cycle through the shop. There's some other rooms you haven't seen. We've got a machine shop, we've got a body shop, but this we call the showroom. When a vehicle comes in, it usually will get disassembled in here and sort of start the process. And then once it's sort of broken down, these guys take over, and that's where engines get built and transmissions get built and all of the really heavy lifting of a build. Ultimately, it'll get processed to the body shop, where it'll go through an obscene amount of work to get painted. All right, so we're gonna have a little fun here, and I'm gonna see if anybody gets even close. Who here, like in a restoration paint job, so let's just say you were gonna restore paint this truck. What parts have to come off this vehicle? There's one word, but
Everything.
everything. The hood has to come off, the hinges come out, the glass comes out, the wiring comes out, engine, transmission, differential, seats, carpet, everything. You reduce it to a shell. And then you blast it, and then you do the metal work, and then you do the body work, and then you do the paint work, and then you do the cutting and buffing. And so I want someone to take a guess, and just since I'm standing next to it, what would it cost to do a full I'm not talking about Earl Scheib or Mako. I'm not talking about corner body shop where they scuff it down a little bit and shoot paint on it. To take this truck, gut it like a fish, go through all the metal, body, paint, cutting, and buffing. Anybody want to guess at how long and how many hours that takes? $50,000? Anybody else?
I would say 100,000.
That's actually the number I use now, is $100,000. Because just the time to go through all of those phases, the materials alone, $5,000 to $10,000. The materials aren't crazy, but it's 1,000 hours of work. And so, you know, in most shops that do that right, that's 2 years. It's 2 years of just doing the body of a vehicle to the point where it poops out the other end painted and you can start actually building it. A friend of mine who has a shop in Texas, if somebody brings in a car for him to paint, he tells them we are going to start with 5,000 to 6,000 hours. Not dollars, hours. So his paint jobs tend to run about $500,000 or $600,000. I mean, they're very nice, but that's what it takes to do it. And that's why when, you know, people write and they say, well, we want you to do a full restoration for 20 grand. Chris, when you came here, you might have thought that I mean, I think you didn't believe that, but you might have thought that that wasn't completely crazy, right?
No, I told you that where I came from, the most expensive job we ever did was $12,000.
Yeah.
And we won't open the trailer unless we have $15,000 on hand.
Right.
So we don't, you know, it's a completely different world. And in the private sector, everything's about speed. You know what I mean? You keep it affordable by doing it fast, and you have fast mechanics, and you know, that's how it. But with classic cars, working fast and working smart, you know, they sort of go hand in hand. You can't just have at something when it's old and priceless, and so that, you know.
Have you've now witnessed why sometimes a brake job can take 50 hours, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
Like most people think of a brake job as you pull the wheels off and you pull the shoes off of the rear drums, you pull the pads out of the calipers on the front, you slam a couple new ones on, and you send it out the door after you bolt the wheels and tires on. Is that what the process here? We go through the lines, the hoses, the rebuilding of the calipers, rebuilding of the wheel cylinders.
And then fix the trap that was set for you by the last mechanic.
Yeah.
That over-torqued everything to the point that none of the bolts came out.
Well,
you know what I mean? And none of the lines would come off, and, you know.
No, I'll never forget what I believe to be the most expensive brake job we ever did. A man came in with a car, and he said, my rear brakes are bad. And so, you know, everybody always says, well, how much will that be? And so I said, you know, I don't know, but being as your car is 80 years old, let's just say maybe we're going to spend $5 grand. And he's like, okay. I think we probably went over budget $30,000 or $40,000 on his brake job because it had nothing to do with his brakes. What was wrong was his irreplaceable differential. Somebody had beaten the axles out of it with a sledgehammer and destroyed the axles. So we had to go custom build him new axles because the purchases where the axles went through the bushing or the bearings and the seals had been beaten with a sledgehammer, so it was just chewing up all of that. So we had to basically redesign and manufacture irreplaceable parts for him. So by the time we got to the brake job, heck, that was probably $500. It was the $30,000 worth of work we had to do to get to the brake job.
Get the wheels to stay on it.
Yeah, and that's actually the way things work more often than I would like to sort of have them happen, right?
Well, you see me, sometimes the cars will come in here and I just walk by and shake my head like, what has he got me into now?
Well,
but, you know, it turns out good.
We have a philosophy around here. We're actually afraid of no car. We're terrified as hell of some of the clients, right? Because if a client really does think, and in fact, a guy is very upset at me right now because he wrote me asking to work on his car, and I explained to him the reality of building cars, and I said, so I'm going to ask you for a budget. I mean, I'd spent an hour explaining the question before I asked him. I said, so when I ask you, if you give me a budget that we've already agreed it can't be done, the conversation's over. So I finally said to him, all right, now I need a budget from you in writing. And he wrote me a budget that's unobtainable. It's impossible. I wrote him and I said, I'm sorry, we can't help you. I don't want to go in, like we're not that little corner shop where, I mean, and I'm not going to disparage anyone, but isn't it normal in the mechanic industry to not look at things wrong and just do the thing you're told to do?
That's right. I would say that's industry standard.
Yeah.
To do what the customer wants and only what the customer wants.
Yeah, so like if they tell you to go in and do a brake job and you notice that the brake hose is like fraying and cracked, but that isn't part of the job, the industry says, don't look at that. You were paid to replace pads. Replace the pads and get it out the door. And we work on the opposite. We look for every bad thing on the car. Don't get me wrong, we call the client, but that's the way we operate. Our whole intent is not to give you back the car you asked for, but the car you actually wanted. And I think we do a fairly good job at that.
Yeah.
I mean, our clients leave here 99% very happy.
You have the most critical eye of anybody I've ever worked for. You have a very critical eye.
I'm the weenie around here. And they'll give me a car that okay, we've test driven it 10 times and it's good. What happens when I drive the car?
Yeah.
We get a list.
Case in point.
I come back with a list.
We get a list.
Case in
Like,
point.
okay.
That little orange car back there we just discussed. I had it completely put back together, running, driving car. We took it out driving, and Dan did 360s around.
Some donuts with that old orange car.
And decided he did not like the front suspension. Brought it back. I completely removed the entire front suspension. We sent it across the country and had the beam remolded into a better angle and had tie rods and stuff made for it and completely changed the front suspension in it into something that was a little bit more predictable. Yeah. And for me, I was like, all right, this car's ready. I'm ready. Here we go. And then here.
Here's your list.
Here's your list.
And that's the way we roll. And what I like is these guys are tough enough that they don't get their feelings hurt when I hand them a list. Because ultimately what I want is for the client to jump in their car and go, this is better than I ever thought it would be. And that really is the response that we get about 95% of the time. They say it's better than anything that I'd hoped for. So with that, I'll just point out a couple cool vehicles in here and then we'll be done. This vehicle right here, 70 Corvette. What's amazing about it is that's the, hang on, because we've got two yellow.
That's 68.
Oh, this is the 68, I apologize. Where's our 70? Oh, the 70's in the back. The 70 in the back still has original paint on it. And here's what's fascinating about the original paint. There's 3 different shades of yellow on the car. And I spoke with the guy because I deal with a lot of NCRS judges. And it's very rare to find an original 1970 car with paint. Who here knows what kind of paint we were painting with in 1970? It was lead-based, but what was the formula, do you know? Okay, today everything is done in urethane and urethane enamels. Back then it was acrylic lacquers, okay? And just prior to that, so in the 50s, we were still painting with plant-based lacquers, nitrocellulose lacquers, all right? So these old paints didn't have the stability that modern paints do. So that car has 3 different shades of yellow on it from the factory. St. Louis painted it and they painted it in 3 different parts of the shop and then assembled it and they went, good enough, send it out. And it went out the door, all right? And so it's fun learning about these things. So the man that owns it, that car is possibly the single most important possession in his life. And he doesn't want us, and I don't want to, he doesn't want us changing the paint. He wants it to be 3 different colors of yellow because that's sort of the history of the way GM did it. We've got, let's see, let me just go down the line here and tell you. So the white car right there, that's a 63 split window Corvette with fuel injection and factory air conditioning. One was created by General Motors. This blue car right here, wrong wheels on it right now, those are rollers. 57 Corvette, and what I'm convinced is the coolest color. And the man just sent me photographs of him with that car back in the early 60s. He's had it since he was a teenager. And that's why that car is here, because he's owned this thing. He's now, so you figure, in like 1962, he was graduating from high school, which would make him what? Mid-70s today, right? So he's had that car since he was still living with his mom and dad. That's not a car to him, right? That's his youth, right? I guarantee you when he jumps back into that car, when it leaves here, he will be 18 again, grabbing the wheel, and he will be back in high school looking for his buddies. That's what that car will be to him. Another very special car, I happen to be a fan of Corvettes, you know, a 427 tri-power, big block roadster here. Yeah, I know. Chris happens to be a fan of old Fords, and this one, although I don't consider it old, it's practically brand new, being a 79, but what's special about this truck?
There's a lot. What? This is a very special truck.
But okay, he loves Ford, so I don't trust him when he says that. But so what is special about this particular Ford?
It's all option pickup. It's got low miles. We got a great customer.
Well, no, you told me a story about 79 Ford pickups.
79 Fords were great trucks, and they were such good trucks they didn't wear out. And they hurt the sales of the 80 model Fords. So Ford would trade them in and then put them on a ship and send them to South America and sell them down there because they were hurting the sales so bad of the newer trucks, and everybody loved the 70s trucks. Ford had an effort to ship them things out, man.
Yeah, and the man found this one. He didn't own it originally, but you know, a lot of our clients, it's a lifelong dream to find the thing. He found it, and what option does this truck not have?
Oh, this is an all-option truck.
It has about everything.
Yeah, at 79, they didn't put power windows in them.
Yeah, power steering, power brakes, air conditioning, four-wheel drive, tilt column,
factory CB radio.
Yeah. So
yeah, breaker.
and so a lot of those options didn't work, and we're rebuilding all of those options so that when he gets this truck back, it'll be like a new truck. All right, so that's pretty much it. I can talk about any one of these cars for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I think that's the most incredible car in the entire shop, right there. You are looking at a car, and yes, I know it's got dust on it. We can't help dust around here. That car has the original grille, the original paint, the original pinstripes, the original seats, the original carpets, the original top, windshield, engine, water pump. Everything that car was born with the exception of radiator hoses and oil filter and oil and tires. With exception of those parts, that is exactly the way it came out of the factory. And the woman who contracted for that car in 1967, Chevrolet put her name on it. Yeah. There is a placard done by Chevrolet, and it says handcrafted for Doris Birdseye by Chevrolet, and she was not allowed to sign the financing contract. Her husband had to do it because apparently they wouldn't allow a woman to finance a car in 1967. Okay? I mean, that's the best we have all the original paperwork on it. That car...
It's an air-conditioned convertible.
It is an air-conditioned convertible. So it's actually a very oddball to have a Rally Sport option in a convertible with air conditioning. That just didn't happen. There are probably not 100 of those cars in the world, and we're pretty sure that that is the single finest example of any of them that exists. So for me, being a Camaro freak, and especially a 67 Camaro freak, literally that is probably the most perfect Camaro that exists in the world for a 1967. And that's why those things tend to gravitate their way here, because when someone has something special, they sort of migrate here. Cars here come from not only all over the country, west of the Mississippi, but also all over the world. We've had cars here from Europe, South America, Mexico, Canada. So they pretty much, if they're in the world, they land here.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Motorcycles, at least.
Yeah. All right. So with that, one or two questions, and we'll close it out. Anybody want to know anything? I know nobody wants to ask you a question. I know.
What do you do? I've seen on your show that you got these basket cases. I mean, the guy pulls a truck and a trailer in, and it is just like everything's in a basket. And
Right.
you want to say how much to fix this.
Yeah, and I actually don't give estimates. I don't give quotes ever, because there is no such thing as a quote on this, and I don't even give estimates. Basically, I look at them and I say, what do you think a good budget will be? And if they're very reasonable, we'll work with them. If they're unreasonable, I say, thank you very much, there's the door. That's sort of how that works. because you don't know what it's going to cost. I've had single parts. We had one part in this shop, it was $45,000 for one piece. That wasn't a part that had like pieces on it. Nothing moved. It was a single casting, $45,000. So how can you possibly figure out what something's going to cost when you're paying 45 grand for one piece? All right, any other questions? Really? All right, then I'm not answering a single question. I'm not answering any question.
What were these buildings?
What was this
before
building?
you were
Is this not
here?
the world's coolest building?
Totally.
It is.
It's so great.
In roughly 20, this building is right at about 100 years old, and we don't know the exact date. I think it was the late 20s. This was built as National Linen. This was a laundromat. Would you see those black pipes up there? When I bought this building, there was hundreds and hundreds of feet of that and about 30 tons of boiler in this building with asbestos and everything else. So we had to get rid of all of that and turn it into what I believe is the world's coolest car garage. So that's what this building was. It was National Linen.
Yeah, y'all see those big fans up there?
Oh, yeah.
See, they're like 8 foot in diameter.
Actually, they're 12 feet in diameter.
12 feet in diameter.
Those are 12 foot in diameter, yeah.
How long have you been in here?
We started moving in 2010. It took 2 years just to clear out the asbestos and all the bad stuff to the point where we could start working. So 2010 to 2012 was the era that we were moving in.
When did your show start?
Like 2013. Yeah, so we weren't even fully moved in when there was a knock on the door. They said, "We want to shoot a TV show here." And I said, "Oh, hell no." And it went downhill from there.
And they're back.
And they're back.
And there's more.
And they're back. All right, folks, that's it.
Sorry.
No, I said, no, you did not.
Yeah, right.
All right, what's your question?
How long do you typically have a car? Like, it sounds like years.
Our shortest project, the thing under that tarp right there will be about our shortest project in history. It was stolen and somebody damaged the paint. We just have to fix the paint on it and return it to the owner, okay? That'll be here a week, 2 weeks. The longest vehicle, 5 years. So there's your range, 2 weeks to 5 years. That's, that narrows it down a lot, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, now the questions. See, now that I don't want questions. What's the question?
What is the criteria for hiring somebody, and how many people work here?
Okay, I start by punching them in the face a few times and see if they can handle that sort of...
Don't let him lie. His job interviews are 2+ hours long.
Yeah.
I understand.
Bring your washing shoes.
What I tell people is the single most important thing is attitude. So I hired a man, one of the hires that I'll never forget. He's not here anymore. We're still friends. He was here for 5 years, Davey.
Oh, yeah.
Davey came here out of prison. No one would hire him. He was a convicted felon, had served his time, and he said, "I want to work here." And so we talked, and it was all about attitude. And I said, "What can you do?" And he said, "I can clean." I said, "Okay, I don't really need someone who can clean full-time," although you'd look around and go, "Tin, you're wrong." I said, "But I'll tell you what, we'll start you off cleaning, and you show me you've got something else, and we'll work on it." Within 2 days, he had swept every floor, cleaned every bathroom, and I said, "Okay, that went too fast." And I said, he had this amazing, literally the man would put his hand in a toilet and pull a turd out. He wasn't afraid of anything. So at that point I said, "Why don't we teach you how to do a little bit of masking and taping up in the body shop?" Took to that amazing. So then it was the next thing and the next thing. And before long, he was fabricating panels, welding, bodywork, painting. So that was just a success story. He stayed with us for, 5.5 years, something like that. And then I still hate the United States Navy and the Merchant Marines for this because they called him one day and he wanted to travel the world and they said, "We've got an opening." And he walked in and he goes, "Dan, we got a problem." But I wished him well. We sent him off and he's now traveling the world on ships and having the time of his life. But this was by the time he left here, this was the first place he had ever been where he stayed out of prison for, I think, more than about a year. So it was just a success all the way around. Yeah, that was a very cool program.
That's great.
All right.
So how many people work here?
We have when we had 35 here at one point, I looked at the end of a 9 mil most days of my life. Right now we have, I think, 14 total. That's a very happy number to me.
It's on both sides, I think.
Yeah, that's on both, yeah.
For
About 14 people total.
with the off-grid and the EZ Homesteading
Yep.
and the car department.
Yep. And what I like is it's closer to more like almost a family, right? That these days, by the way, this young lady right here, I know she looks like she's 70 because she's aging in FantomWorks dog years, but she's actually not that old. What are you, well, we don't want to talk about your age. What are you, 32?
No, I think I'm 34.
34.
I think I'll be 35.
Yeah, you quit counting.
Okay, 35. All right, so she's middle-aged. So this middle-aged young lady is actually running the floor most days. So,
Pacing the floor, running the floor.
yeah, punching guys in the face when they need it.
Yeah.
Or threatening to if you know they're sort of getting just a little bit bad. She does a great job, and so for me that's my success is if you can step away from a company for a day or a week and it still just runs like it doesn't matter that you're not there, then that's when you've actually done something right, and we're there. So she's doing a great job, and of course she has a great team. These guys, one of the bad things about running businesses today is the expression babysitting. And the good news is she doesn't really have to babysit. She just has to keep things going. And because babysitting is tough. All right. And with that, folks, we're going to sign off. Come on down to FantomWorks. Come on down and see our off-grid store. Come to our farmers market, which will be the 2nd and 4th Saturdays of every month from April through September. I don't know. I'm tired of talking. I know, believe it or not, I'm tired of talking. Yes. No. So we will catch you again. Thank you.
That's a first.
Bye.